She slammed her folder shut so hard the water glasses shook. 22 people in that room. Not one of them moved. She reached into her bag, pulled out a single sheet of paper, slid it across that 12-foot table, and cancelled a $900 million deal she had spent 6 months building. For them. The billionaire patriarch who had just humiliated her in front of everyone finally opened his mouth. But she was already at the door. And what happened next destroyed his entire dynasty. Hey besties, welcome back to another irresistible Mafia romance story. I missed you. Before we dive in, tell me in the comment where you're watching from. I love seeing how far my girls are. And if you're new here, don't forget to like, share with your friends, and subscribe. Stay with me, because these stories? They only get crazier. Nia Brooks grew up in Tupelo, Mississippi, not the pretty part. The part where the roofs leak and the dreams leak out right alongside the rainwater. Her mother Celestine sewed wedding dresses in their living room for women who would never invite her to the wedding. Her father worked 24 years at a furniture plant until the day it closed and moved to Mexico. He sat in his car for 2 hours before coming inside to tell them. He never fully came back from that, not really. But Nia? Nia watched everything. She was the kind of child who didn't just see problems, she saw why they existed. At 14 she rebuilt her mother's entire booking system with colored markers and a spiral notebook. Celestine's income went up 30% in 60 days. Her mother looked at her across the kitchen table and said, "Baby, you see things other people walk right past." Nia held onto that sentence like a lifeline for the next 15 years. She won a partial scholarship to a small university in Tennessee nobody outside the state had heard of. She worked the FedEx night shift to cover the rest. Graduated top 4%. Sent 31 job applications to firms that never taught at her school. 2 called back. One offer, $34,000 a year in Nashville, well below what her white classmates with lower grades were being offered elsewhere. She took it. Smiled. And started learning everything those firms didn't want to teach her. 6 years later she could walk into any failing business and know within 48 hours exactly where the money was bleeding, who was lying, and what the company was actually worth beneath the wreckage. She was better than anyone they had at any of those firms. They gave her the work and someone else the credit so many times she stopped being surprised. One senior partner wrote in her annual review, "Exceptional instincts. Needs to work on executive presence." She had just saved a $200 million deal by herself. She filed the review. Said nothing. Kept working. At 31 she walked out and started Brooksbridge Advisory, 1 room in Atlanta, a used desk, and a printer that jammed every 3rd page. 8 months of near silence. Then a banker named Gerald Moss called. He didn't waste words. "I have a client. Old money. Drowning. Too proud to say it. I've looked at 6 people for this assignment. You're the only one I think can actually close it." He paused just long enough before saying the name. The Hargrove Group. Now, here is what the world didn't know about the Hargrove Group. 4th-generation billionaires. Legacy logistics empire. Portraits of white men going back to 1887. From the outside, untouchable. From the inside, on fire. Their logistics division was bleeding $40 million a year. 3 properties in technical default. And Elliot Hargrove Sr., the 79-year-old patriarch, had been making private investment decisions for 4 years that his own board hadn't been fully informed about. They had 18 months before it all became public. The only thing that could save them was a $900 million acquisition of a European logistics technology company called Vidalink. Clean. Strategic. Perfectly structured, if someone brilliant enough could close it. Every advisor before Nia had quit or been fired after clashing with Elliot Sr. Gerald knew that. He told her anyway. And then he said something that should have been her first warning: the family can be difficult. But the deal is real and the money is real. Just keep your head down and get it done. Keep your head down. She should have heard what those 4 words actually meant. She took the assignment. Relocated to New York. And on her first day inside Hargrove Group headquarters she met the family that would change her life, though not in the way she expected. Harrison Hargrove II was 52, technically the CEO, and the most insecure powerful man she had ever met. He needed her desperately and resented it completely. His wife Cecilia had no official title and total unofficial control. She assessed Nia in the first 5 seconds and decided she was dangerous. And then there was Elliot Sr. himself, who shook Nia's hand at their first meeting, looked straight through her, and turned to Harrison and said, "Good. Keep me updated." As if Nia hadn't just presented the most comprehensive deal analysis anyone in that building had produced in years. But here is the plot twist nobody saw coming. Peter Voss, the CEO of Vidalink, the man whose signature was worth $900 million, had done his research before flying in from Amsterdam. He knew exactly who was running this deal. And at the end of that first week, he pulled Nia aside in a corridor and said quietly, "I want you to know something. My board almost walked away from this deal 2 months ago. We stayed because of the analysis your firm submitted. We thought it was a team. I just realized it was you. Alone." He looked at her for a moment. "I hope they know what they have." Nia smiled. She already knew they didn't. 6 months inside the Hargrove empire taught Nia one thing above everything else: brilliance without belonging is invisible. She restructured the Vidalink deal 3 times when the Hargroves' own financial disclosures created complications nobody had anticipated. She flew to Amsterdam twice on 48 hours notice, economy class both times, because the Hargrove travel coordinator kept forgetting to book her. She held 4 separate crises together with nothing but intelligence and sheer will, any one of which would have killed the deal permanently. The first crisis, Elliot Sr. unilaterally demanded a deal term that would have caused Vidalink to walk immediately. Nia spent 11 hours in back-channel conversations quietly undoing it without embarrassing the family. Nobody thanked her. The second, a financial disclosure leak nearly spooked Vidalink's entire board. Nia kept Peter Voss on the phone at midnight for 2 hours. He stayed at the table because of her voice alone, steady and certain in the dark. The third, and this one almost broke her. Cecilia Hargrove, with zero authority to do so, contacted Vidalink's legal team directly and created a structural confusion that threatened to unravel 3 months of work overnight. Nia rebuilt the trust in 72 hours without telling a single soul what Cecilia had done. She protected a woman who would never protect her back. The fourth, Harrison too panicked 2 weeks before closing and tried to renegotiate the valuation terms. Nia talked him down in a stairwell at 11 p.m., her back against a cold wall, her voice never once rising above a conversation. Afterwards he straightened his tie, walked back into the boardroom like nothing happened, and took credit for stabilizing the deal at the next morning's briefing. In 6 months of internal emails, Nia was referred to exclusively as the consultant. Never by name. Not once. But Peter Voss always knew her name. And one evening in Amsterdam over dinner, a dinner the Hargroves hadn't been invited to because Peter had requested a private meeting with Nia specifically, he said something that cracked something open inside her chest. "You know what I see when I look at you?" He set down his glass. "I see the person who should be sitting at the head of this table permanently. Not closing deals for families like the Hargroves. Building your own empire." Nia looked at him across the table. The candlelight. The canal outside the window. A man who had built a billion-dollar company from Rotterdam with nothing but a vision and a refusal to be small. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. He smiled. "Because after this deal closes, I want to be your first investor." She flew home with that sentence living somewhere behind her sternum. She didn't tell Gerald. She didn't tell anyone. She just held it quietly and kept working. The night before the closing she sat at her kitchen table at midnight. Everything was ready. Every document. Every clause. Every protection she had built into the agreement like armor around a family that didn't deserve it. She called her mother. Celestine picked up on the second ring the way she always did, like she had been waiting. "How do you feel, baby?" Nia was quiet for a moment. "Like I built something real, Mama. I just hope they let me finish it." Celestine heard the thing underneath those words, the thing Nia wasn't saying. "Mothers always do. Whatever happens tomorrow," she said softly, "you know what you did. Nobody can take that from you." Nia hung up. Reached into her bag. Checked that the document was there, the one she had prepared 3 weeks earlier and prayed every day she wouldn't need. The withdrawal notice. Already signed. Waiting. She closed the bag. Turned off the light. And in the morning she put on the burgundy blazer her mother had bought her the day she landed her first real contract, the one Celestine said made her look like a woman who wasn't asking anybody for permission. She arrived at the Hargrove estate at 7:45. 45 minutes before anyone else. She walked the room alone, adjusted the documents, checked the seating, stood at the head of the table in the silence and breathed. At 8:30, Peter Voss arrived. He crossed the room directly to her. Shook her hand with both of his. Said, "Nia, we are here because of you." His team stood behind him nodding like men who meant it. At 9 the Hargroves arrived. All of them. Harrison too. Cecilia, in a cream suit that cost more than most people's rent. The board members. The adult children. And finally, Elliot Hargrove Sr. moving slowly, deliberately, like a man who had never once been late to anything in his life because the world had always waited for him. He entered the room and his eyes swept it the way powerful men sweep rooms, cataloging, assessing, dismissing. His gaze passed over Nia like she was part of the architecture. The meeting opened. Nia stood at the head of the table and began walking the room through the final deal structure. 6 months of work, clean and airtight, every number in its place. Peter was engaged. His legal team was following closely. Even Harrison too seemed to exhale for the first time in weeks. Then, 15 minutes in, Elliot Sr. raised one hand. Slowly. Like a king. Nia stopped. He turned to Peter Voss, not to her, and said with complete composure, in a voice designed to carry across the entire room. "Peter, before we go further, I'd like someone with the right background to walk us through the financial terms. She's done good work. Administrative work. But for the actual close, a brief, dismissive gesture in Nia's direction, I think it's more appropriate. Harrison, take it from here." Total silence. 22 people. Not one word. Nia stood at the head of that table. And in the silence she felt something shift, not break. Shift. Like a key turning in a lock she had been carrying for 31 years. She looked at Harrison too. He stared at the table like it owed him something. She looked at Cecilia. The smallest smile. Cold as marble. She looked at Gerald Moss at the far end of the room. His eyes were closed. She reached into her bag. She didn't slam anything this time. She didn't raise her voice. She pulled out the withdrawal document, crisp, already signed, 3 weeks of quiet preparation, and she slid it down the full length of that 12-foot table like she had rehearsed it her entire life. It stopped perfectly in front of Gerald Moss. He looked down at it. Something in his face collapsed. Then she spoke. And the room that had ignored her for 6 months finally, went completely still. "Mr. Hargrove, I restructured this deal 3 times. I flew to Amsterdam twice on 48 hours notice. I kept Peter Voss at this table when he was ready to walk, twice. I held this deal together through 4 separate crises, any one of which would have ended your family's empire permanently. Every number in those documents, every clause, every protection your family has in this agreement, I built that. From scratch. For you. That is not administrative work. That is the work. All of it." She picked up her bag. "And if after 6 months you still need someone with the right background to stand where I'm standing, then you don't deserve what I built for you." She turned to Peter Voss. He was already looking at her, had been looking at her since the moment Elliot opened his mouth, with the expression of a man watching history happen in real time. "Peter, I'm sorry. You came here in good faith. You deserved a better room than this." Peter Voss stood up. Slowly, deliberately, buttoned his jacket, and said, to the entire Hargrove side of the table, not just Elliot, "I agree with her completely." His entire team stood with him. Elliot Sr. opened his mouth. Nothing came out. For perhaps the first time in 7 to 9 years, nothing came out. Harrison too finally looked up. But the door was already closing behind her. Now, if you've been watching from the beginning and you're as obsessed with Nia as I am right now, hit that like button and drop a comment because this story is not finished. Not even close. Because what happened in the 48 hours after that door closed? Nobody predicted. Nobody. Nia sat in the hired car outside the estate. Hands in her lap. Completely still. The driver didn't speak, something about her silence told him not to. She looked out the window at the Hargrove gates as they pulled away. 4 generations of wealth behind those gates. A dynasty built on the assumption that certain people would always need them more than they needed those people. She opened her phone. Found the message from Peter Voss already waiting, sent from inside the estate, while his team was still gathering their things. It said, Amsterdam. Whenever you're ready. I meant what I said at dinner. She typed back 2 words. Next week. Then she called her mother. Celestine picked up on the second ring. How did it go, baby? Nia looked out the window at the Connecticut countryside passing by. Beautiful. Cold. Built for other people. I cancelled it, Mama. Silence. Then, you cancelled a $900 million deal. Yes, Another silence. Longer. Then Celestine said, with a steadiness that only a woman who had sewn wedding dresses for people who never invited her to the wedding could possess. Good. Now build something they can never touch. What Nia didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that inside the estate, the Hargrove deal was already decomposing faster than anyone could contain. Peter Voss formally withdrew Vidalink 4 days later. His letter was 1 paragraph. The last line read, "Without Ms. Brooks, there is no deal." There never was. The Wall Street Journal connected the dots within 6 weeks. The headline landed like a grenade, Hargrove Group's hidden crisis, and the consultant they pushed out the door. The family's private financial disaster, the $40 million annual bleed, the defaulted properties, Elliott's secret decisions, all of it surfaced simultaneously like a body that had been underwater finally coming up. The board removed Elliott Sr. from all operational decisions within 30 days. Harrison too resigned 43 days after that. Cecilia released a statement that made everything worse. The dynasty that had survived 4 generations began its most spectacular and public unraveling, and at the center of every story, every analysis, every industry conversation, was the name they had refused to say in that boardroom. Nia Brooks. Gerald Moss gave one comment on record. Just one. She is the most capable dealmaker I have worked with in 30 years. What happened in that room was an embarrassment to this entire industry. 3 months later, Nia launched Brooksbridge Capital from Atlanta, a deal-making and investment firm built specifically to find overlooked founders in the American South and across Africa and build the transactions the mainstream financial world never bothered constructing for them. Peter Voss was her first call. Her first investor. Her first believer with a checkbook to match his words. Within 18 months, Brooksbridge had closed 4 transactions totaling $2.1 billion. Fast Company put her on the cover. The headline read, "The deal-maker they tried to silence." Nia framed it. Hung it on her office wall in Atlanta, right next to the withdrawal document from October 14, 2023. Still crisp. Still signed. Her mother called the morning the cover went live. Before Nia even woke up. "Baby, I just saw it. I'm sitting here looking at your face on the cover of a magazine." A pause. "I'm going to take it to the dollar store and show everybody." Nia laughed, the first real, full, unguarded laugh in longer than she could remember. But here is what nobody knew. Not Gerald. Not Peter. Not Fast Company. Not even Celestine. 3 days before the Fast Company cover hit newsstands, Nia received a message from a private number. No name. No introduction. Just 7 words. "We need to talk." The Hargroves weren't the target. And Nia Brooks, who had survived everything, felt, for the first time in a very long time, genuinely afraid. If that ending just stopped your heart, good. Because the next chapter of Nia's story goes somewhere nobody is ready for. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss it when it drops. And drop a comment right now. What do you think that message means? Who sent it? I want to see your theories, besties. See you in the next one.